For these examples, we will use a set of diagrams to determine whether the argument is valid. If the argument is valid, we will determine if it is also sound. Validity is based on whether the conclusion follows from the premises, and soundness is based on whether the premises are true. A. All media outlets have some bias. The New York Times is a media outlet. Therefore, the New York Times has some bias. The first two statements are the premises, and the last is the conclusion. We will start by illustrating the premises. The sets we are looking at are media outlets, things with bias, and the New York Times. The first statement says that all media outlets have some bias. This tells us that media outlets are a subset of things that have bias. The New York Times is a media outlet, telling us that it is a subset of media outlets. With this visual, we can see that the New York Times is a subset of both all media outlets and biased entities, which means our conclusion does follow the premise, making the argument valid. We can also say that the argument is sound because both premises are true. B. All cells have a membrane-bound nucleus. Bacteria do not have a membrane-bound nucleus. Therefore, bacteria are not cells. Once again, the first two statements are the premises, and the third statement is the conclusion. The sets we are looking at are all cells, things with membrane-bound nucleus, and bacteria. The first premise tells us that all cells are a subset of things with a membrane-bound nucleus. The second premise tells us that bacteria is not included in our universal set. So we place it on the outside. Looking at our completed diagram, we can see that bacteria are not cells since it is not inside the cell's subset, making the argument valid. However, it is not sound because the first premise is false. C. Some students drink coffee. Ricardo drinks coffee. Therefore, Ricardo is a student. Our sets are some students, Ricardo, and coffee drinkers. Since some students drink coffee, the sets of students and the set of coffee drinkers overlap. The second premise says that Ricardo is a coffee drinker. However, if we look at the set of coffee drinkers, we see that there are two parts: those that drink coffee and are students, and those that drink coffee and are not students. Neither premise tells us which Ricardo belongs in. So the conclusion does not follow from the premises. This means the argument is not valid or sound. D. No person can run a marathon in under 2 hours. Eliud is a person. Therefore, Eliud cannot run a marathon in under 2 hours. Since the first premise says that no person can run a marathon in under 2 hours, we will draw two sets that do not intersect: the set of people and the set of things that run marathons under 2 hours. The second premise says that Eliud is a person, so we place him in the set of people. When looking at the created diagram, we can see that Eliud is not in the set of things that can run a marathon in under 2 hours. So this argument is valid. However, this argument is not sound because Eliud did run a marathon in under 2 hours, making the first premise false. E. No integer is an irrational number. The number 13 is not an integer. Therefore, 13 is an irrational number. Since the first premise says that no integers are irrational numbers, we can draw two sets that do not intersect: the set of integers and the set of irrational numbers. The second premise says that 13 is not an integer, so we know it cannot go inside of the set of integers. However, both sets we have are inside the universal set of all numbers, which means if 13 cannot go in the set of integers, it could go in the set of irrational numbers or outside of both sets, but inside of the universal set. So the conclusion does not follow from the premise. This means the argument is not valid or sound.